on my way. Glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way.
Welcome back to Oscar's Greatest Moments 2014, Jeffrey. I'm Patrick McDonald, HollywoodChicago.com, and the Chicago Film Tour, Jeffrey.
And I'm Jeffrey Leibham, Chicago's premier Oscar historian. Not only do I know the facts, but I've seen the film.
All right, Jeffrey. And we're going to go into a segment we did very successfully, I think, last year.
Absolutely.
Last year, what we did is we went over the entire history of the Oscars, looked at every year of Best Picture, starting in 1927. And we picked the 5 years that we thought were the best classes of Best Pictures. So we're going to do the same thing with
The Best Actor category this year, and we're only going to have 4 that we assume are the best.
Okay, well, let's talk about this picture.
Let's talk about this picture right here. This is the gentleman that was the lucky recipient of the very first Academy Award for Best Actor. That's Emil Jannings. He's a German actor. He won for 2 performances, which was very common in the beginning of the Academy Awards history itself, that you were nominated for multiple roles. He won for a film called The Last Command, and also a film called The Way of All Flesh.
Okay.
Interesting thing, Pat, about
Yes.
The Way of All Flesh is it's the only Oscar-winning performance that's a lost film. Unfortunately, none of us will be able to see it anymore because the negative has been lost. It's been disintegrated.
Which from 1890 to approximately 1930, covering the whole of the silent era, quote unquote, it is said that up to 75% of those films are lost.
Which is a tragedy.
So let's start off with our best classes of Best Actors. Jeffrey, you're number 4. So.
My number 4 would be the year 1967. 1967, we have Warren Beatty for Bonnie and Clyde.
All right.
Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate.
All right.
Paul Newman, Cool Hand Luke.
All right.
Rod Steiger in The Heat of the Night.
Okay.
And Spencer Tracy in his very last film performance, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
I have no argument there. That's my number 3.
All right.
Yes. Let's talk a little about that year. I think Tracy's his nomination was more of a symbolic one, and the other 4 performances I think are classic performances.
I agree.
I think they're definitely Warren Beatty's finest role was Bonnie and Clyde,
and Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate was perfect. I mean, he was cute. Sexy, just young, fun, spunky Dustin Hoffman, and he was great. And the film is incredible as well.
What do you think is the weak sister in that one?
I have to tell you, the weakest one was unfortunately the one who took Oscar gold home, and that would be Rod Steiger in The Heat of the Night.
Yes, I have to agree with you there. Poor Rod.
Yeah.
My number 4, we go back to 1953, Jeffrey. 1953.
Okay.
William Holden, Stalag 17, Marlon Brando and Julius Caesar, Richard Burton in The Robe, Montgomery Clift, and Burt Lancaster From Here to Eternity.
All right.
Now, we chuckled because, of course, I think both of us agree that Burton's performance in The Robe, in that bombastic...
Not one of his better nominations.
That was the first widescreen picture, correct?
Yes, I believe that
The Robe was
correct.
the first widescreen picture. And I think William Holden's Stalag 17 performance is one of the enduring
I think it's great. He totally deserved that Academy Award, for sure.
We can argue about Julius Caesar. It's a decent adaptation, and Brando holds his own.
Brando, you can understand Brando's diction, at least in this version.
And then, of course, From Here to Eternity.
Yeah,
first, he introduced the great Montgomery Clift, who had been nominated a couple years before, but this is his first great role. And, of course, Burt Lancaster.
I agree. Yeah. Both very strong performances in a film that I'm really a huge fan of, From Here to Eternity. absolutely. Everyone in that film, I think, is incredible.
Great. So we went over my number 3. What was your number 3?
My number 3 would be a year that I'm sure you're not too fond of, Pat, or we're not going to agree with this. My number 3 is 1974. 1974. We have Art Carney for Harry and Tonto. Albert Finney in Murder on the Orient Express.
Okay.
Dustin Hoffman, again, in Lenny.
Yes.
We have Jack Nicholson, thank you, in Chinatown, and Al Pacino in The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah, well, I didn't even have that considered because of Carney and Finney, but the Hoffman, Nicholson, Pacino.
Hey,
they're 3 of the best.
I think Albert Finney's performance is great in Murder on the Orient Express.
He plays him, Cole Perot.
He does, correct. And some people may find his performance a little too meticulous or a little bit too campy.
I go with campy. Is what
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And Art Carney, although he could be the weak link in this whole category, still not a bad performance in Harry and Tonto.
And the thing about Harry and Tonto, it's such an oddball movie. I mean, there's no way you can categorize it at all. It's just a strange little flick.
It is.
And he again, this is a case where the Academy gave the older actor his due. To my number 2, and that would be the year 1979, Jeffrey.
79.
We've got Hoffman, Kramer versus Kramer. Jack Lemmon in The China Syndrome, Al Pacino in Justice for All, Roy Schneider and all that jazz. A great underrated performance.
Incredible performance.
And then, of course, the great Peter Sellers in Being There. His last nomination, and a shame that he never won an Oscar, but...
and Being There was probably the role that he should have won an Academy Award for.
Yes, even over Dustin Hoffman's terrific performance in Kramer.
I do agree.
And Jack Lemmon in a great late career role in China Syndrome. Of course, the weak sister is Mr. Pacino.
It is.
Overacting.
And I do think,
no, sir, you're out of order.
And I do think Jack Lemmon is kind of just calling in or phoning in his role as Jack Lemmon. I mean, it's a very Jack Lemmon role. Particularly how he handles the final climactic scene at the very, very end. I won't ruin it for you.
It's lemony.
It is very lemony, very zesty lemon.
All right, sir, your number 2.
My number 2, speaking of lemony and lemon, includes Jack Lemmon. In my favorite role, it's from 1960 would be the year. Jack Lemmon was in The Apartment.
Yes, I agree with that.
But we also have Trevor Howard in Sons and Lovers.
Okay.
Burt Lancaster in Elmer Gantry.
Great role.
We have Laurence Olivier in The Entertainer. And again, Spencer Tracy in Inherit the Wind.
A fine run there. And I think I did have that circled on my list. But again, I had to disqualify myself by not seeing 2 of the movies, which was The Entertainer and Sons and Lovers.
Okay. Well, Trevor Howard in Sons and Lovers is almost unrecognizable. It's one of those movies where I was watching it for the first 15 minutes and then I thought, oh my God, that's Trevor Howard.
Wow.
And Laurence Olivier in The Entertainer, probably his slimiest, scariest, strangest performance. Check it out. It's definitely creepy, and he definitely deserves that nomination for playing way against type.
All right.
The weakest link in this one, again, I think, unfortunately, would be the guy that took Oscar home, and that would be Burt Lancaster and Elmer Gantry. Not really a huge fan of the Flim Flam Man that he played. I think Jack Lemmon easily should have won it for The Apartment, but that's because I'm such a huge fan of that particular film.
And also that movie has just, it never ages. You can tell it's set in another time, but the morality in it never ages.
Correct.
One of my favorites, and I'm proud.
And the sentiment in it probably will never age either.
And I'm proud that that's the best picture in my birth year. So there you go.
Should be proud. 1960.
Of course, I was born 10 years later, but
that's right. But it was a great year, 1960, nonetheless.
All right, since you did your number 2, I'm going to go to my number 1. Boom. 1940.
1940. All right, going way back.
And the reason I'm doing that as my number 1, I think that it matches the classical movie actor with one of their classic roles. So let's start off with the winner, Jimmy Stewart, in the Philadelphia Story, holds his own with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn playing a very showy, show-offy kind of socialite. And he's kind of the glue of the movie in that, and it's a classic role for him. Charlie Chaplin, the great dictator, it was the first time he spoke on screen.
Correct.
And he played a
very edgy role.
Edgy role as a Hitler-esque dictator, with an incredible speech at the end. Just one of the finest moments in early motion pictures. Henry Fonda, The Grapes of Wrath, is Tom
can't
Joad.
go wrong.
Cannot go wrong.
Classic performance.
Amazing performance. Very visceral. Raymond Massey, Abe Lincoln in Illinois. He was
also
a guy who played that on stage for how many years during its Broadway run. Brought the role to the film, to the movies, and did a great job with that.
He did.
And finally, Laurence Olivier in Rebecca, the first role of Sir Larry on these shores, and a memorable one. Very handsome man.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
So yeah, 1940 is my number one, and your number one.
My number one is 1982.
Oh my god!
And I'm surprised that Pat didn't pick this year.
Oh my god!
Because it includes Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie, which is one of his favorite performances.
I have to say, you're right.
But along with Dustin Hoffman, we have Ben Kingsley in Gandhi.
All right.
We have Jack Lemmon once again in Missing.
Okay, see, we have Paul Newman in The Verdict,
which is his greatest performance, I think, of all of his nominations. And finally,
Peter O'Toole
in My Favorite Year. And the reason that I think that all of these are strong performances is because you have two comedies. You have Dustin Hoffman playing broad comedy, and Peter O'Toole playing pretty much a washed-up alcoholic star.
Yeah, I would put that, besides Lawrence, as one of his best of all the nominated ones. And Beckett, I mean, comedy, it's his comic role, yes.
It was. And I really think that Jack Lemmon in Missing, I mean, that plays like a political thriller, and I think that he really nails a lot of those, he nails the confusion that's going on trying to find his son.
I agree.
The anger against the U.S. Embassy.
But I also think he's very Lemony in that role, too.
He is, yes.
Okay.
But Ben Kingsley, come on. I mean, you feel like you're watching a newsreel of Gandhi himself.
Yes,
I mean, what a riveting
that's
performance.
One of the greats of the last generation, yes. It's funny, I looked at that and considered it, but didn't put it on my list, I think because I'm not a fan of Lennon's performance in The Missing, and I think there are better Paul Newman performances.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes, but I have no argument with Peter O'Toole, Hoffman, or Ben Kingsley. So,
all right.
Another interesting look into the world of Oscar.
That's right.
We'll be watching that this Sunday along with everybody else. And good luck to all the nominees.
That's correct.
And
enjoy the show.